Hi everyone, Arnold here, santamuertemagic.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. The topic of today's video is, what do you owe to Santa Muerte? One common question I receive has to do with this idea of transaction, of when is it necessary to give something to or to do something for Santa Muerte. Perhaps someone is new to this path and community of ours, and they want to know how these transactions work, whether it is necessary to make a transaction before they can consider themselves devotees. So to start, let's be clear on what I mean by owe. When I say, what do you owe to Santa Muerte, I am discussing an obligation. In other words, what obligations do you have within the traditions of Santa Muerte magic and Santa Muerte devotion? The short answer is that unless you promise to give something or to do something, then you owe nothing. Your status as a devotee has nothing to do with what you give or do. Your status as a devotee is entirely dependent on your relationship with Holy Death. And good relationships should not depend on or be contingent on what can be given or what can be done. The love, the acceptance between the parties should be enough to sustain the relationship. Most people that I know in this community come to Santa Muerte as complete strangers. They meet Santa Muerte by chance as they are living their lives, and they grow the relationship from there. Now, it always helps me if I can draw an analogy in order to illustrate a point, so that's what I'll do now to explain why the default position should be that you owe nothing. Let's say you're at a bus stop and you see a stranger sitting there waiting for the same bus. At this point, what do you owe to the stranger? Nothing. Just because somebody exists in the same time and place as you, just because you become aware of somebody's existence, it does not mean you owe them anything. Now, just because you owe them nothing, can you still start a relationship with that stranger? Of course you can. You can open up a dialogue and become friends. Can you receive gifts from that person who is now a friend? Sure. And you can even give gifts without expecting anything in return. And still, even at this point of building your relationship, at this point of getting to know one another through conversation, at this point of acknowledging each other's existence and exchanging gifts back and forth with no strings attached, still nothing is owed. There is no obligation to keep encouraging this relationship, no obligation to keep giving gifts, and not even an obligation to receive or acknowledge the gifts that are given. Now, over time, your relationship with this friend at the bus stop grows, and you become more comfortable with one another, but the relationship is still very casual. One day you forget your wallet, and therefore you have no bus fare, and you ask your friend from the bus stop if you can have some cash for the bus. Notice I said have. This is not a loan with an expectation of repayment. You ask simply, hey, you know me, can I have some bus fare? And your friend, who likes you, thinks, sure, a couple bucks won't break the bank, and what's a couple bucks among friends? Here's $2 so you can get on the bus. Is anything owed at this point? Technically, no. Asking for a gift that is fulfilled does not create an obligation on your part. The reason is because the gift did not have to be given. You asked for a gift, the gift was given, and now the transaction is done. Eventually, you and your friend at the bus stop become the best of friends, inseparable. You're going everywhere together, you're finishing each other's sentences, and they get to know you to the point where they can tell when things are not going well. They might sense that something is wrong, ask you what it is, and then offer to help you solve whatever problem you might be experiencing. You think, oh my gosh, thank you so much, my friend. Yes, I accept the help. Is anything owed at this point? Still no. Again, when gifts are volunteered, when help is volunteered, it creates no obligation of anything in return. This does not mean you are taking advantage of your friend, because all through this time, ostensibly, you would still be maintaining your relationship, showing respect for your friend, acknowledging their presence in your life, spending your time with them, and maybe even continuing to give them little gifts with no expectation of anything in return. Eventually, you want something specific from your friend, and you want to encourage them to say yes. And so you come up with something that you can do in return for their help. And you make the proposition. You say, hey, friend, if you give me ABC, then I will do for you XYZ. Your friend, however, cannot help. You're a little disappointed, but you understand these things happen. Is anything owed at this point? No, of course not. You made the offer was refused, no harm, no foul. You go back to being friends, neither party owes the other anything. But what if your friend comes through? What if they say, I accept, I will give you ABC in exchange for XYZ? This is the only point throughout this entire analogy that we've just gone through when an obligation is created. When you promise to give or do something, whether it's in exchange for something else or just because you want to, that is when an obligation is created. Because when you make a promise, it should be kept. I received an interesting email one time from a devotee who had made a request of Santa Muerte, and she attached a promise to the request. Just for the sake of explanation, let's say this devotee asked for a miracle and promised to get a tattoo of Santa Muerte if the miracle was granted. The miracle was not granted. But what confused the devotee, and the reason for reaching out to me, was because this devotee had a dream of fulfilling the promise. They had a dream of getting the tattoo even though they did not get their miracle. So this person was asking, could this be a sign that Santa Muerte wants me to fulfill this promise anyway? My answer was no, do not fulfill the promise. And the reason for my answer was just that you don't want to fall into the trap of feeling obligated to do things for nothing, when nothing is happening around you. If you make a promise for a miracle and the miracle is granted, then fulfill your promise, because that's the right thing to do. If you want to just make a gift, then make a gift, but don't consider it payment for a miracle that was not granted. For this person who wrote me the email asking about the tattoo, if they want to go and get the tattoo, then they should go and get the tattoo. But it should be for them, or perhaps as a voluntary gesture to Santa Muerte. But it should not be thought of as payment for something that was not delivered. So basically, all of that was just to say, you owe absolutely nothing until you decide there is something to be owed. Now, what if you want to make a promise in exchange for a miracle and you don't know what you should offer? This is another common question that people will ask me. They will often say something like, if I want this miracle, what should I offer in return? And my answer is always the same. It's a question I cannot answer. The reason I cannot answer it is because so much of the value of what you have to offer is wrapped up in everything about you, including how you feel internally about what you have to offer. In other words, it's all subjective. So you really have to search within to figure out if something is enough. If you are someone who is struggling from month to month, scraping by just to make ends meet, then buying something like a candle for $5 might be a big deal to you. And that might be more than sufficient in exchange for helping you get that job you really want, or helping you receive the healing miracle that you are after. But if you're a multimillionaire, and if the idea of a $5 candle means nothing to you, then it will likely not mean very much to Santa Muerte. And if you're just going to make a throwaway promise that means nothing to you, then don't be surprised if your petition is treated with the same level of frivolity, with the same lack of seriousness and passion. If you are unsure about whether or not something is sufficient as an offering in exchange for a miracle, my rule of thumb is if you have to ask, then you could probably do better. If there is any doubt about the value of what you have to offer, then that doubt will only work against you, because magically speaking, it could creep into and poison your intent. In magic, when you work to convey your intent, to make your desires clear, you want as much confidence as possible. If there is any wavering, any doubt, then your request could easily be viewed as one which you are making in vain, as if you already expect the request to fail. And you should never make a petition for something that you expect to fail. You should enter your petitions with full optimism and feeling confident about what you have to offer. And it is fair to mention at this point that your offerings do not have to cost a dime. Taking the time to recite the Santa Muerte Rosary or any prayer that is intended to honor Santa Muerte is as powerful an offering as any other, because your time is valuable, which we know is true because there's no getting it back. So don't think you have to spend money in order to satisfy a promise to Santa Muerte. With that, I think I will start to bring this video to a close. The key takeaways that you should pull from this video are that you owe the Santa Muerte absolutely nothing unless you want to owe her something. Feel free to accept blessings that come into your life for what they are, gifts given without expectation of reciprocation. Feel free to make gift offerings to Santa Muerte without any expectation of reciprocation. This is a great way to acknowledge and thank Santa Muerte for her presence in your life. But you are under no obligations until you create the obligation through your own promises. And if your promise is in exchange for a miracle from Santa Muerte, then there is no obligation until that miracle is provided. As far as what you should be giving to Santa Muerte in order to satisfy a promise, that is entirely up to you and depends entirely on your circumstances. If you think something is not enough, then it probably is not enough. But at the end of the day, it is what is in your heart that counts. It is the thought that counts. If you make a promise attached to a lazy or frivolous offering, then you should not be surprised by lazy or frivolous results. Hopefully, I've explained everything clearly, but as always, please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. You can get in touch through the contact form on the website. There's also the Patreon messenger system and the Discord chat server. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye.